Good morning. It's morning my time up here in Alaska. I'm Colleen Fisk. I'm the education director for the nonprofit Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP, and I'm on Denina lands outside Wasilla, Alaska. And I will pass it over to Carolyn, and then you can do a quick intro, and then we'll do announcements afterwards. But take it away, Carolyn.
All right. Hi. Carolyn Burns, she, her. I work for the CLEAN Institute, which is a nonprofit focused on climate education and advocacy, headquartered in Miami, but I'm in the Tallahassee office. We just wrapped up our big lobby day last week, and we got over 200 people involved from all over the state coming up to the Capitol and talking to elected officials. So it was really successful, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of relieved that it's over. Dana, would you like to go next?
Sure. I just joined in, and this is my first teleconference, but I've been on the email distribution list for a while. Had a chance to sign in today. I'm from Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I teach a bunch of climate and environmental science related courses, and sort of curious about what you all do.
Welcome, Dana. Glad you could join us. Ingrid, you want to go next?
Sure. Ingrid Zabel. I do non-formal climate change education at the Paleontological Research Institution in Ithaca, New York. We're affiliated with Cornell University, and we have a natural history museum and a nature center, right? And I work at both. Maybe I'll pass it to Jim.
Great, thank you, Ingrid. Jim Callahan, Mobile Climate Science Labs, helping to bridge the bridge between formal education of working in two schools specifically, and then with many others, as well as informal or out of school programs that go on mostly in California and Washington, D.C. And it's keeping to it of Dana and John. People, at least I don't know, and perhaps we don't know, and I think for most of us, we give you a priority. So John, if you could, we want to definitely learn from you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John Beck. I work in the NOAA Office of Education. Same as Dana, I've been on the list for a long time. I work with Frank Niepold, and just wanted to just get a sense of, the clean calls and kind of what you guys are up to. So, and then I'll hand it over to Eric.
Great, thanks, John. Eric Havel with the Chabot Space and Science Center and Community Resources for Science here in the Bay Area. I'm located in Oakland, where the Science Center is, and then CRS is located in Berkeley. So do a lot of professional development workshops, activities, events. A big one coming up next week, which I'll share during shareouts, and also a lot of student-facing programs and focused on climate and environmental literacy specifically. I will pass it to Katie.
Eric. Hey everybody, I'm Katie Boyd. I am the program manager for CLEAN and am based at the NOAA's Cooperative Institute, the Cooperative Institute for Research and Environmental Sciences, or CERES, which is based in the Boulder, Colorado area at the University of Colorado. A lot of affiliations. And I use she, her pronouns, and I'm on the traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. Let's see. Jim, did you go yet? Is it just Gina
now?
I did.
Did Gina go? Okay.
So
yeah. Maybe Gina, if you want to give any kind of hello, if you want to intro.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. I am Gina Fiorelli Duranlo. I'm the CLEAN program coordinator, so I work really closely with Katie. But even though I work with CERES and University of Colorado, I work remotely from Vermont, so I am on the East Coast. But very good to see you all, and it's always good to see new faces on these calls. So yeah,
so today's an informal discussion day. So I kind of put an idea out there, but I want to give time for announcements first. But if announcements turn into some other topic, that's fine too. So we've got lots of time for announcements and discussion since we don't have a presenter today. So if you want to raise your virtual or real hand, if you have any announcements that you want to do. I know, Eric, you had mentioned something. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and go first while other people think about it?
Sure, sure. So we're hosting a large event here in Oakland at the Chabot Space and Science Center, which is a science museum, mid-scale in terms of how big it is, not as big as New York Hall of Science or Exploratorium or Cal Academy in San Francisco, but sort of a mid-scale. But the event is going to be centering climate literacy efforts in 3 districts in the East Bay. So Oakland Unified, Berkeley Unified, and Fremont Unified. All those 3 districts here in the Bay Area have climate resolutions, adopted climate resolutions at their school board level. So they're all kind of required to implement climate literacy across the K-12 curriculum. But they're in different phases of that work. It's kind of the story of 3 districts. There's only 4 formal ones in the state that have it. LA is the 4th one, but many that are emerging and aspiring to have literacy resolutions, and a lot more that are doing environmental literacy writ large. But anyway, the idea is to showcase these 3 districts, share best practice with each other, see where the districts are having stumbling blocks, where they're up against challenges, and see where they're being successful. And each district is in a different part of its evolution. So Fremont is kind of what I would call the level 3, the most advanced. Berkeley's in the middle, and Oakland is kind of level 1, doing a lot of work, but it's not necessarily organized under one umbrella or one person or one department. And then a lot of other districts are going to have attendees. So it's mostly teacher-facing event, but teachers that are driving the initiatives within their school districts. But we have some administrators, we'll have student voice. We've got about 25 students attending, 120 participants have RSVP'd, and this is next Monday here in the Bay Area. So really excited about it. And I think we've talked a lot for our 2 new folks, Dana and John on the call. We talk a lot about climate literacy and what different states are doing, what's happening in New York, what's happening in other states, what's not happening and why. So I think in California is definitely leading a lot of efforts, but also learning at the same time. I think the other exciting thing for California is there's a new Senate bill, AB 285, which is requiring climate literacy across K-12 science education, specifically at the elementary level. That's a new piece. So you've got the state pushing from the top, districts pushing from the bottom, and then a lot of the work that we're doing kind of in the middle to just build literacy. So we're really excited about the event, and I think equally excited about where it goes, what we learn from the event and where districts need support and what kind of supports that the partner organizations like the Informal education groups that I work with, what we can do to help build professional development opportunities, connect dots between teachers, students, and resources and opportunities, field trips, learning opportunities. So anyway, very excited about that. And next week I'll be facilitating the call. So I'll be kind of recapping this event on Tuesday. It'll be real fresh in my mind. So I figured, Gina, that was a good way to just go for it. Yeah, so that's the big one. And please reach out or put my email in chat. But I think the learning that outcomes and things that we learn next week, I'm excited to share what comes of it.
Thanks, Eric. I'm really excited to hear how it went. Yeah, and Jim, I'm sorry, I'm going to skip you for a minute because we had a new person come on. So I'm going to let Christy introduce herself and then let you do your announcements. Hey, Christy,
Awesome.
Good to see you.
It's been a while. Great to see you, Colleen, and everybody here. It's great to be back. I was teaching last semester, so I missed a whole semester of CLEAN meetings. My name's Christy Buffington. I'm also in Alaska, like Colleen. I work at University of Alaska Fairbanks in the Chatheta campus, which is in Fairbanks on the lands of the Tanana Dene people of the lower Tanana River. And I'm very there's a lot of, I work on about, I think now 7 projects, all with climate education and also energy. Colleen, you'd be happy to know I started a new project as a team member with Alaska Center for Energy and Power on sustainable grid work in rural Alaska. microgrids, and that we've talked about Colleen's business, Renewable Energy Alaska project, and we'd like to partner. So that'd be great. I've learned a lot from CLEAN over the years. I work in the space of engaging people to do local citizen and community science using various methods, including GLOBE. So just give me any kind of visual in your face if you've heard of GLOBE. Okay, I saw a head shake. So GLOBE it's an acronym, but it's also before the acronym. It's a science and education program. It is now, I think, in 127 countries. And people like it because there are set scientific protocols that kindergarten, pre-K, all the way through undergrad can use. There's an open science data platform where they can enter the data. And it's also an education program. So there's all these built-in lesson plans with it as well. I use it with the undergraduate watershed management students that I teach. And the acronym, in case you really want to know, is Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. And we are starting, we just did a GLOBE and ocean acidification program, ocean acidification education in Sitka, Alaska, along with Sitka Tribe of Alaska as well. And it's really neat to start using these protocols. And I'm talking a lot here, but I brought on a new person, Kayla Bannister, who just joined. And Kayla used GLOBE as an undergraduate student. And then she became a NASA intern. She was looking at snow and the albedo with light absorbing particles on the snow surface. And I know Kayla just joined, but I wanted to introduce her to this group because she's interested in climate and energy education, and she's also learned it by doing it. So Kayla, do you want to give a quick intro? And sorry, that was really long-winded. Colleen, thanks for the time.
Hi, everyone. I missed the first part of it. I'm sorry. I just kind of signed up for the CLEAN network and seems very interesting and relevant to some of my work. So I'm excited to hear about everybody and what this is all about.
Glad you could join us. Thanks, Kayla. And are you based in Fairbanks too then, working with Christy?
I actually just moved from Fairbanks. I'm in Kentucky now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Okay, Jim, I know you're a very patient man, so I'm going to let Katie Wilson introduce herself. And I promise I'll get to your announcement. Katie.
Thanks, Colleen. I'll try to be quick. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Wolfson, she, her. I am the School and Public Programs Manager at the UCAR Center for Science Education. That's one of the education groups at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. We're in Boulder, Colorado. The UCAR SciEd team, you'll see a variety of us hopping into these CLEAN meetings. There's a few of us who kind of rotate in and out. But we do a variety of kind of focused on pre-K to gray audiences, we say, teaching about weather and climate and earth system science in a variety of ways, whether that's field trips here at the NCAR Mesa Lab Visitor Center, or tours or virtual. I'm in our virtual studio today where we do virtual field trips all over the world. We also provide a lot of teacher resources and articles. We work with GLOBE. We have the GLOBE implementation offices here at NCAR as well. And we work with GLOBE to help develop curriculum tied into their protocols, or participating in a community science project called the Ozone Garden here too. So yeah, we have a whole kind of slew of different things of exploring and inspiring people of all ages to explore and understand and connect with our planet, and ties in a lot to climate science. So some of our projects right now are kind of making some of our exhibits more accessible to blind and low vision visitors through apps and tactile exhibits, or Also kind of updating and revamping our climate change focused field trips that we call learning labs, just to kind of bring that up, them up to speed a little bit more. So nice to see everybody today.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, Jim, thanks for waiting. I'll let you go next.
No
Anybody else?
problem. I totally agree with that. Anybody we don't know as well should get most of the time here. I wanted to note that tomorrow is the last day to update the online iPosters for AGU. Okay, so many of them are fixed, but some of them can change. For folks among the conferences that are held nationally, the American Geophysical Union is certainly among the ones that the CLEAN Network and the folks that are here tend to more take a part in, and it offers us a lot of opportunities. So there's a chance to do that. In our posters, we tend to make sure there are cross links to others. So in a little bit, I'm gonna just in the middle of things, I'll put something in the chat, links to other posters that I know of. If anyone can say, I'm sure we're missing somebody who's in the CLEAN Network, and we want to include that. Quickly, Katie and CLEAN, of course, Frank Neopold and Noah. So John, I think that if there's anything else that Noah Education had that we're missing, we want to catch it. Patrick Chandler from UCAR, Melissa had a poster. We caught that one. If there's another, we want to catch it. And then I want to make a plug too that we have many posters from the high school students, the Bright Stars, and we're looking to bridge the under 20-year-olds and the over 20-year-olds on things on that. So anyway, if I put those in, that's what that's about. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Are there other announcements? So I have one announcement that's not really official yet, but I'm really excited about it, so I'm going to share it anyway. Is that if you guys know KidWind, the national organization, they have their annual Recharge Academy in different places around the US, normally in July, but this year it's like 95% there. We're going to do it in Fairbanks, Alaska in June. So I'm very excited about that. So you'll be seeing announcements for that. Once it's official and posted on the KidWin website, we'll be sharing that with the CLEAN Network and all the wide networks. And Christy, I'll be chatting with you too, for sure about that and other things. It sounds like you're doing some cool things with ASAP. I'd love to hear about what you're working on. So that's my announcement. And Katie Boyd, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement about the CLEAN webinar we're doing next week, teaching about climate and energy with CLEAN. Karen Kirk is leading it. We've done this one in the past. It's a great webinar. So if you want to help spread the word about it, we'd really appreciate it. I put the link to the event where you can register in the chat. Thanks. Next week on Wednesday, February 7th.
Thanks, Katie.
Which I can't believe next week is February already. Let me just mention that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, so if there's no other announcements, and of course you guys think of stuff as we're going that sparks something that you want to talk about, feel free to. The informal topic that I thought about today was kind of breaking down silos in education, and at least our education work that we do. So what are some things that you've been successful with? What are things that you haven't been successful with? What are some ways? And, I mostly think about this in terms of like other, organizations that are maybe have similar goals as you. So how do you make sure that you're not like duplicating efforts or working together and complementing and amplifying each other's work? But I also like how Eric said earlier about, connecting teachers with the resources that they need to know, teachers and students. And so any way that you kind of think about that, like how do we, working together? It's kind of cool that Christy's here because that's an example of how a couple of organizations in Alaska work together. We've taught a couple of classes together where I have a lot of the energy literacy and resources, and worked with Christy and others to put together basically a climate and energy class and a climate and energy in Alaska class for teachers that we taught using different resources. And so that was, kind of a cool example. But then there's also other organizations that I've worked with that I kind of struggled to work with because maybe their funding, their goals are maybe more aligned with supporting oil companies and having people understand energy on, fossil fuels. And so, kind of curious about other people's, what are some successes or failures that you've thought about or strategies that work well for you? Leave it open, pretty open-ended topic there, but thoughts, ideas? Yeah, Katie.
So I'm gonna start this out actually not totally answering your question, but I wanted to mention that we just recently I'm still working on kind of finalizing it, but we had a student help us analyze the survey results from the Excel Summit that we did in November. And we found this last year too, but this year I just wanted to like highlight, like that was a really cool event for this idea. There was like so many comments in there. Most of the comments were about how useful that event is for like networking and connections. And a lot of people talked about the different connections they made and being able to kind of do that. So I just wanted to kind of like highlight that this group that you all are part of with Clean Network and like the work that Gina's been doing to have those regular sort of events, I think is a really important part of this. And we did that work before as well on the network side of things to look at like the network itself and how people connect through Clean, through like the social network aspect of it. That paper, I need to reach out, actually is still in review, but I talked about it in a Clean call at one point in time. Anyway, so it doesn't really get at like how do we do this, Colleen, and some of those specifics you were just asking about. But I just wanted to mention like it's so cool to have you all here because I think that this group and the Clean Network and the Excels events are a really important place where some of that can happen. And I just wanted to thank you all for being a part of that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And maybe and I think that's part of why I thought this might be when Gina's like, hey, do you have a topic that you want to talk about? It's like, well, this is something I feel like this group is actually pretty good at doing, at networking and working with other people. And so, maybe it isn't a great conversation because we already do it fairly well, but I'm sure
I think it's still really important though, I think this is where like we talk about these things, we have the space, we have the things like Excels, but it's still hard to do. We all only have so much time and so much funding, and like that's always a big barrier for so many of us, is like really engaging in it can still be difficult, even when you have the access to something like Clean, where those things can happen. There's still only so many folks who like engage, and yeah, it's just hard to, like, for me even sometimes I'm like, I find out about somebody doing something really cool and it's like, oh, how do you like, how did I not know about that sooner, and like we need to connect, but then sometimes you struggle to find the time to connect or whatever it is. So I think it's still really important to talk about and do, because we all still need to do more of that, with the climate change education being so sort of regionally focused and specific work. But I just, wanted to say that I do think that those are some of the ways that we do make those connections, is by having these sort of regular engagements with each other and talking about the things that we do and being able to learn from each other and connect, to not reinvent the wheel and all that.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Katie. Christy, I see your hands up. Go ahead and jump in.
I am really motivated by the connections that learners themselves make, and how to foster what it is that they're doing, and then have the people who are interested in their work then make connections. And Kayla's an example here, in that Kayla started off just curious. There was something that she did in an undergraduate class. It was in my watershed management class. And then NASA had this internship, and they're like, you're doing fun things. Let's go to your online poster presentations of the students. And it became a job interview for Kayla because she did awesome. And then the NASA SNOWX and MAINZ, which is an acronym, but that team invited her to apply for an internship. And then it was very like, Kayla got to come up with her research questions with these scientists, and the scientists realized, wow, we're in a silo. Like we don't, like, how do we work together across NASA? And how do we work together with climate education? How do we work, like, you're measuring the albedo. And so Kayla is the one who brought everybody together. And it's not and then it led to a grant that got funded as well to continue this kind of work. So I don't know how to foster that. Like, it was very organic. And I think Kayla is because of you, like, saying, hey, why aren't we working together? But how do we do that with students of all ages and levels? So Ingrid, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was going to give an example that not directly related to what you were saying. So I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that first. I didn't want to derail the thread.
I think it's okay. I think we're all processing that awesome connection. So.
Okay. Well, I was going to mention about work that I've done collaboratively with other people. I think the things that have been successful for me have been where each collaborator brings something to the table that the other doesn't have. And so we need each other. And this, I've had a few examples in the last few years locally. One that I'm working on now is there's an educator at our local public library who's teaching, he's preparing a class to teach coding. So he's going to be teaching high school and middle school students how to learn how to code R and Python. And so, and I don't have those skills to teach coding in those languages to kids. But what he doesn't have is a data set. And we have data sets from our nature center, weather data, carbon dioxide data, air quality index data. And so what I'm providing is the data set and the context around it. Like, why do we collect environmental data? Why is it important? Why is it valuable to create graphs of data? You know, what do you learn from a graph as opposed to looking at a table or a spreadsheet of data? So giving that context around science and climate change, and also some practical context. Some of our AQI data comes from last summer when we had a lot of wildfire smoke here from the fires in Quebec. And we used those AQI data to make decisions about camp, our summer camp at our nature center. Like, did we have to cancel camp on a day when the smoke was too bad? Or did we have to bring the kids indoors, which we almost never do because it's an outdoor camp. So, you know, we're each bringing something valuable to the table. Like someone teaching coding, which I can't do with those languages, is something that a lot of kids want to learn. A lot of parents want their kids to learn coding. But I am bringing the data set and the context around it.
I love that example, Ingrid, and I love the like real world application too of, you know, the camp and the AQI. Thank you. Eric.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, I'm picking up where the two of you shared. So Christy, you're sharing what you shared about NASA reminds me of my college experience. I went to UC Berkeley, huge campus, university with many different colleges. And I did an internship after undergrad, was environmental science major, interdisciplinary. And we were just trying to inventory the entire campus. And then what we discovered was there were all these colleges doing various aspects of environmental work, but they weren't talking to each other. In some cases, there might even be redundancy. So it was just getting these colleges to connect with each other and the professors, and then therefore the students to realize that there's a lot of great work happening. And then more recently, my work with school districts and this climate resolution, you know, these districts, because they're climate resolutions at the district level, it's not necessarily just embedding it in science, right? It's embedding it across the curriculum. So Berkeley is taking that exact approach. They've identified teachers from all the different disciplines to be involved in driving climate literacy at the different grade levels. So like an elementary team, a middle school team, high school team, not just science. And I think the exciting thing for me, you know, is the emerging other areas of climate connection. So like climate justice really has a social science focus and looks at communities that are being impacted by climate change And then also climate storytelling, like the data that you mentioned, you know, the data tells a story, right? And so if we can use that data as a starting point to say, if we see this trend in increasing temperatures or increasing power outages as a result of climate change happening in California, that leads to stories and people being impacted and people being resilient and taking actions. So I feel like the climate justice piece, the storytelling piece, as a way of to bring in language, and you know, also telling stories can be very different ways to tell stories, auditory stories, you know, photo collages, videos, even art, you know, performance. Those are all sort of more classic language arts connections. So I think that's a really exciting place that we are in this. The umbrellas become much bigger and much more inclusive, and that lends itself to bringing in different disciplines and de-siloing, you know, calling to that theme, connecting these different disciplines. And then the power of all those things coming together with engaging those different disciplines, you get the product of that is huge because it's rooted in the science, but it's also rooted in the human experience and how we communicate these things. Because we know that's been a challenge for science, is to be effective communicators. So I think these tools and these practitioners that understand those areas can do so much to expand the way we even comprehend or empathize with this space.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, interdisciplinary is just kind of another way of thinking about breaking down silos, right? And I know I struggle with, I don't know, convincing people how much energy and climate ed needs to be in, and I'm not sure if convincing is the right word, but finding a way for the teachers to have the time to teach it in their classrooms. But I love that you're doing that and showing that example and making sure that you're tackling it that way. But Dana, I know you wanted to jump in and add to it, so please do share some more.
Yeah, so a little bit of broader background. I'm an ecologist, conservation biologist, generally by training. That's been my research. Started out sort of narrowly focused on plant-insect interactions, but got interested when I was actually a postdoc at Boulder. I was working at the Mountain Research Station and studying Apollo butterflies up at the Mountain Research Station, and got more broadly interested on climate impacts in the Alpine. So I went and took a faculty position at Pacific Lutheran University out in the Northwest, and ended up partnering with the Park Service to do current day studies of butterfly distributions in Mount Rainier National Park and comparing those to historical data. Sort of my entry point into thinking about climate impacts in terms of how that was changing species distributions. But I, in terms of conservation, think climate is such an important issue that it comes into my ecology course, it comes into my conservation courses. But I wanted to broaden that out and engage the broader population of undergraduates. I teach at a liberal arts college that's primarily undergraduates. And as I developed that course, it speaks to, I think, Eric's point about addressing an interdisciplinary audience. I really try to engage those students in their own disciplines. So in that course, we do a little bit of physical science of climate change background. Then we do my interest, which is biological impacts of climate change and how things are connected ecologically. But then in the last half of the course, I really let the students explore topics that connect to their disciplines. And it really is a broad interdisciplinary course. Have business majors, educators, some other scientists, and it culminates in a final project where students get to, you know, do whatever is appropriate for them. So the business majors, I try and hook them by thinking about opportunities and developing business plans for new sustainable businesses. And for the educators, it's about lesson plans. And the chemists, I had 2 chemists in my course last time. It ended up being their senior thesis project to think about CO2 capture, carbon capture technologies. But the way they get to connect with it individually really is, I think, the philosophy that when we think about how do we do broader education, which I've done a little tiny bit of. I partnered with the University of Wisconsin Parkside and their Adventures in Lifelong Learning program to teach seniors about climate change. But thinking about how are seniors going to engage with this issue, it's trying to find the areas that they find of interest. But the note in the chat, I'd love your emails if you're willing to collaborate a little further. I've had a couple of grants from the Wisconsin Space Grant Coalition, really intending to use NASA data in my lab courses. So using open access data to teach about climate issues. But I'm applying for another Wisconsin Space Grant to do some outreach with local educators because I think it's really important that we get this into the K-12 curriculum here in Wisconsin. And I'm trying to think about how to engage not just the biologists and the scientists around climate, but to sort of mimic that experience I've had with the undergraduates. How do we get artists to engage with climate related topics, or how do we get social scientists to engage with climate related topics, and thinking about all those issues you've been talking about, justice, those sorts of things. So the plan is to do a summer workshop for a broad spectrum of teachers, but think about how that might connect to their different disciplines, have them take away individual projects at the end where they would develop a set of lesson plans that align with the state standards for their disciplines. So again, if you have experience and would be willing to help me think about that, depending on that group of teachers we recruit, I'd really appreciate it. That'd be great.
That's great, Dana. Learner choice is such a powerful tool in being able to connect with what they know. That sounds like you're doing that really effectively in your course. I'm curious how how people sign up, or how students are signing up for your course. So is it like, how do you attract, I guess is a better question, how do you attract such a diversity of majors into your course?
Well, the goal is to make it as attractive as possible to all of them. So we recently revised our general education curriculum, and we're trying to move away from the standard you have to take some intro science course of physics, chemistry, biology, where you go through the textbook, to get students to take courses that are relevant to their lives. So the climate change course was designed as a general education course that had a lot of relevance to students, where they could learn about science and the process of doing science through a topic that they encounter every day. But I stack onto that. We have some other requirements in our general education curriculum. Oral communication is one of them, where students need to take an oral communication course. They need to take written communication course. But I've made the course oral communication, where we do a lot of presentations, so the students work in groups and present. So, I mean, it fulfills requirements for them. But beyond fulfilling the requirement, I try and make it engaging enough that they actually are interested in the topic and may be interested in pursuing things after the course.
And I'm sure students talk, so when they find out how awesome your class is, they encourage others in their major to take it too. It
is oversubscribed. We need more people teaching.
Okay, I haven't been following all the comments in the chat. Hi, Frank. Glad you could join us for a little bit. Do you want to jump in at all? I haven't been reading what's going on here in the chat.
Sure. I mean, if I caught sorry, I had to be interviewed to make CLEAN promotional videos. That's where I was just before this. So, but I think the cutting across the silos, is that the thrust. I mean, first of all, what we're doing right here, it was designed for that exact purpose. The fact that we've met as members of the CLEAN network at this time weekly since 2008 has always been about cutting across the silos. And if you've watched the thread across those conversations across the years, both with recorded and listened to but not contributed to, but then the gatherings at meetings and professional societies and collaborations and partnerships across the years, if you don't have the network infrastructure to allow us to build relationship with each other, and people come in and out. Eric, I remember when we used to partner many years ago, and now you're back, and we come in and out. I'm not able to be here all the time. So I think if without the networking infrastructure, it's really hard for us to cut across the silos, because we are stuck in our silo. Not everyone here is in the same silo, if you want to think of it that way. So that's just one. And two, the appreciating all the ways that climate and energy literacy, climate change education, education for climate action, whatever we want to call this, where we are in the field, requires many interventions. So I just came from the American Meteorological Society, and we were talking about this, and I was saying, like, this is really a complex contagion solution, meaning that you're going to need career and technical, adult education, community education, resilience education, conservation education, interpretive education, you know, STEM education, early childhood education, mental health intervention, you know, together. And I think where we as a field have kind of gotten to is we haven't gotten to like the at a community scale, how do we activate all of these modes that we know how to do? Each of us are doing pieces of it across. We're not really bringing it together in its most powerful configuration, which is what I'm super excited about. So that if you were going to really cut the silos, I think it's at the community scale where that is most impactfully done.
Well, that's great, because as you were talking before, you said that at the community scale, it's just like, yeah, this CLEAN is so effective, but how do I do that in Alaska? No, like with limited, you know, and the problem is resources, I think, is the difficulty.
Well,
and we do.
But it is resources, but there's another side of it. We always think resource, sorry to cut you off, but I'm just excited. I just got off speaking to cameras without realizing it. So, but we are our own best resources to each other. So sometimes, like if somebody has something in California that's really useful for Alaska, that's a form of resource. So there's like a networking sharing. And then there's like, how do we do this together from what is there? Not like just add a whole bunch of money on top of, but you know, there's a lot of capabilities in these communities, and Alaska is a lot of communities. I wouldn't say Alaska, right? Because I mean, I would imagine in your work, you've realized that there's community scale and that can flex, but Alaska's many communities, like many, many. But, you know, clearly money is a problem. We know that, and we're trying to get there. But at the same time, I think that how we use that money that does come, I think we need to, as a community, get really clear on how to maximally, most efficiently, and impactfully use what we have. Because if we doubled it, tripled it, 4 times it, right, we could misuse it if we're not careful.
Oh yeah, there's too many examples, I think, of having that wealth and being wasteful. So how to be efficient about it, I think, is important. And when I was thinking resource, you know, I just feel like I feel so stretched on my time. I think so many of us feel that way. And so like taking that, you know, making sure that we're not stretching ourselves more, but still building that community. And I think that's part of the benefit of the silos, which I think you're also getting at too, Frank, is well, that's the benefit of working with each other, is that you can complement each other. And so that you're not trying to duplicate efforts someone else is doing, or like I think as Ingrid saying earlier, you know, complementing skills of, you know, coding versus data. And so, you know, finding that. And we do have someone who's working that within my organization, 2 people actually, Alaska Network for Energy Education and Employment. And, you know, it's just always good to think about how that could be done. So thanks for sharing, Frank. And I see Katie has your hand up, so jump in.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a thing that kind of was bouncing around the back of my head listening to everybody, and you know, Frank and then Colleen, you kind of brought it up, right, of like feeling stretched, right? And I feel like there's so many of us doing so many things, and also some things that we've been like, you know, doing for a long time, that I feel like for a lot of times for us, we've been having conversations a lot at SciEd about like, you know, how do we break down silos? How do we collaborate more like with other groups at NCAR and UCAR, let alone beyond, and like communities and all that? Like, how do we build that in? Because we always have lots of ideas, but we never feel like we have the time to do it. And so I think it's being really intentional, right, in like breaking down silos and fostering collaborations and connections, and being very intentional of creating space for that, so that you can do that in like a sustainable way and like kick something off, and like maybe letting go of some things you've been doing in the past too. And like that can be really hard, right? Because if the resources don't change, if you don't have more money or more staff to then keep doing all the things you were doing and then keep adding to it, right, it's being strategic. around that. And so I don't have the answer for that. I think that's something that we're having to of like, but like, how do you create space for that innovation and that collaboration that breaks down those silos when that happens? Or can you build a system in place with your programs where there's a space for that, right? Like, so you have your kind of more stable, static things and programs that are happening and delivering, but then like creating a space or a structure that allows for some more of a sandbox to play in to foster those new relationships. And I don't know. So that's just something that I think about a fair bit. And I don't have an answer for it, but I think it's, I come back a lot to right now of like creating space for the innovation and connection.
Yeah, and I think reminding ourselves that that doesn't necessarily make our lives harder, but that we can find those things that'll make our lives easier if we give ourselves space to think about it. Yeah. Jim, go ahead.
Yes, and I think most of us here are good at this of rather than being frustrated with other people or criticizing, it's like lead by example, be patient, but work with it. I think we're often speaking that the people that we're often working with, the K-12 teachers, that phenomenon is particularly severe, right? That teachers are in their classroom figuring they just have their time. The school's not encouraging them to bring people in, so it's always I don't have time, right? Then when you get a school or a teacher that is able to open up or encouraged to go open up and say, what, you can do this with us? You can bring people in, so I don't even have to, it's like it switches totally around where now there's all kinds of time because there's all kinds of people to do things. If I give an example of one of the schools that I work with, and it's only been 7 months now in Washington, D.C., and this goes for other schools in Washington, D.C., where they're teaching climate change all the time. They didn't even know about the Smithsonian Institution. I mean, it's 7 metro stops away from the Natural History Museum, all about everything that they're teaching. They just take a field trip and it's like, good God, look what you got. You got all these things is hands-on and you can do all this type of thing opening up. So we have a severe problem, I think, of the silodness with K-12 teachers, but need to work together. And, Dana and Eric, of course, you're outstanding in bringing teachers together. And, one teacher has one thing, another has another. Then they see that they do have time for the CLEAN network, and then they have time for the NOAA, and they have time for UCAR, because it's a hit and it works. So anyway, I don't want to give more specific. Anyway, that was just one specific of. Sometimes it's insane, right?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Christy, I see your hand up.
We could use your advice, everyone's advice. So here's a scenario and 2 questions. Scenario, Kayla just graduated with her undergrad, and we have this new project where we want to encourage people to be like Kayla and get this awesome internship with NASA, do their own research, use Globe or other ways to get curious about the community and go out and do environmental monitoring. She made a AGU poster. She's done Globe posters. So having the intern tell the story to youth to get them excited rather than, people on the CLEAN network be the ones to do the webinars with youth. So my first question is advice on doing that kind of reciprocal mentoring and having, say, a former undergraduate, former intern be the one mentoring other undergrads and high school learners. And then the second one is data literacy, like that huge jump of, so all of Kayla's data, she's been invited to publish it to the data archive with NASA, and basically gets a link saying, here's a 400-page document of how to, so you can learn on your own some data literacy and go publish. How do we help like that? How do we get people, because in academia, the silo is, if you haven't published, it doesn't exist. And, I struggle with that. So how do we help, new grads in this space get the, motivate, do reciprocal mentoring, but also do something that benefits them and their careers in climate change.
Frank, you unmuted? You jumping in?
Yeah, well, I mean, because Christy, I'm right with you, right? And there's so many dimensions to what you just said that are, I think, crucial. Many of other ways that that same kind of reciprocality would work, whether I'm a practitioner and I'm thinking about moving into a space that there's sharing and learning available. There's some mutual support for each other, because this is hard work, or you're collaborating to do something new that you can't do by yourself. But what it feels like after the 18 years of doing this, that is the missing piece, is the investments in the infrastructure that enable that. It's the intent is there, but how do you, because if you're trying to build that infrastructure and be the one who either has a need or something to offer, it's a lot. But if you don't have that enabling infrastructure to work within, which is what we've done here, very light touch and minimalistic and insufficient. But you know, the what I see is we need way better infrastructuring to enable these, because we have 7 time zones and tribal nations and 50 states plus 5 territories. I mean, and then you get international and just keeps on going. But you know, I think we're just super thin on the infrastructure, and not working in hub and spoke architectures clearly tell us what to do. But you know, if we had the $200 million for climate change education we did in 2010, I think if we don't invest here heavily, we won't tap into that abundant capability that you named, because it won't be facilitated by something that is beyond any of us' abilities currently.
Frank, I would
Thanks, Greg.
bring up, if I might, as always, wise and very important you're bringing up. And you know that I'll tend to come in kind of from the ground up perspective, which is not in conflict at all, right? There's sort of the government or the large and the big thing that without that we have nothing. We would not have the clean network.
Sure.
But coming in as both an informal and an informal teacher and so on, a lot of times it is trying to lead by example or have a solution where it's going to work with small resources and not be held back that there may be something that needs to be done and there isn't a big structure yet to do it. But go ahead and find a way to do it on a smaller scale. And if someone says it's not big scale, well, tough stuff. It's going to be, I can only do so much, right? Dana, Christy, we can only do so much, but look at what we can do. So, I mean, one of the themes I would like is really, if it's make the point of, it's a good thing when in school, real in the ground teachers are able to connect with each other. I have been part of programs that have been funded by NASA before, but then the funding ran out after 3 years, right? So it was good, it did some things, and it's gone. But encouraging the programs that are around to, okay, I mean, some of them do institutes. I'm not talking about climate generation, but others that do institutes. And then I say, well, can we connect with the teachers? Can the teachers connect? And there isn't any interest. We're there to indoctrinate the teachers on what to do. How do we work together and learn from each other of just how valuable it would be? And finally, I would say, I think there's an incentive to the resource providers is when you're part of that, when that's happening, it becomes more clear how valuable clean resources are and PRI's resources are and UCAR's resources are when we're all working together and making things happen. I'm kind of being long-winded, but I'm just saying if we can be more clear about the need to encourage and allow teachers to connect with it and learn from things. And not wait, but both encourage, but not wait until there's a larger infrastructure. Is that I don't mean to be in conflict with you, Frank.
No, you're not in conflict in the slightest, because if you don't have anything to share, then there's nothing to share through, right? If you have a network with no content or no intent, there's nothing. But at the same time, you know, maybe a simple way of thinking this is I went back to the November 7th clean call, and just one example where Tim I'm not going to say his last name, built a elective course on climate change for high schools. And his intent was to share it widely, but he still just figured it out for one school district, one school. And so he had it within his sphere of influence to do something important, and he did. But the ability for him to do it in a way that is replicable and shareable to other people in any high school, you could do this too, because he found a hack through the really hard system to do a class that did not get limited by national standards or state standards. I was like, wow, Tim, that's brilliant. But if he didn't have the CLEAN network to move it through, this idea might move around the country or beyond. So like, but you have to do the work, and then you have to have the intent to share with people who are intending to learn from something. So like, that's where like, I think we were rich in what we've learned from each other, and what we can share with each other. But, I still think we have a lot more networking and infrastructuring to get that value even further across. I've said a lot today, so I don't show up that often recently because I'm getting that climate literacy guide through eventually. But, it's nice to be with you all today.
Frank, if you need to hear it, I believe in you. You'll get it.
Oh, I'm tenacious. I'm getting it done. It's just slow and hard.
Well, we are 1 minute to the hour, and I know some folks are dropping off. I think we all have a lot more that we could say, which is fantastic. So I'm really glad that this was a conversation this topic was sparked a lot of good conversation. So if anybody has last minute announcements, links they want to throw in, please do. Otherwise, I think that's it for us today. So thanks, everybody. It was so great seeing so many of you and meeting some new folks.
Thanks, Colleen.
Everyone, thanks, Colleen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for the advice.
Hey, Katie, can you hang on for a second?
Yes.
So I